So I think this one requires a preface. This is my conversation with the author Daniel Fraga. He wrote a book called Ontological Design. What is ontological design? You can say that it is the science and the art of causing change to a being and its consciousness as part of a project. That is one way how Daniel Fraga would put it. Another way of looking at it is that it's a project at the intersection of design, philosophy, more traditional disciplines like advertisement and PR, influencers, storytelling, but also including things like unconventional warfare, even artificial intelligence and digital communication. If you uh, see that many things are coming together at this point of history, even occultism, if you go deeper. So if you add all these into one cauldron and something emerges, in that emergence, what is possible from this sort of specific singularity? Well, something like ontological design. Again, I'm paraphrasing Daniel Frege. Now, why I think that ontological design is extremely important and seminal for our times is because I grew up in a tribe like community in Lahore, in Pakistan, and my exposure to those kind of Eastern mysticism and tribal, semi-tribal way of thinking and performing rituals. So I grew up with a concept called relationality, which was very much integrated, which means that we are not separate as humans. We are made out of each other, like other animals, and plants, and our environment. And so we are not these separated things, but we are these feedback loops constantly evolving sort. And that's why I related a lot with this concept of ontological design because since I heard about ontological design, it talked to me because it talks about that we humans create spaces and tools within that spaces, and those spaces has an agency and they act back on us, changing us, and from that changed point of view we then created more spaces and which then act back on us, creating this kind of a feedback loop, changing our being. And so, what I am trying to do in my research and PhD is something very similar. So, that is why ontological design is a very core concept for how I see the world, how I am trying to um, move forward with my research. So, I contacted Daniel Frege to talk about ontological design, but also ask very specific questions about my PhD. But we also said that maybe at some point the conversation might be something which we might want to share with other people. And I feel like that, yes, at some point the conversation went to a place which I would like to share it with everyone. And that's what you would hear. We talked for like about 30 minutes about what is my PhD, and then um, we went on broader topics. And so just to quickly say that my PhD is about building spaces using technology, the spaces and learning institutes where we can have various different practices or curriculums or ways of learning that can expand the capacity to learn and grow. So that's the research part. And so what you will hear is Daniel Frege asking me about my intentions and why I want to do it. And so that's I think the conversation became more general because it is a question for me, you, and everyone. It's like, why are we doing what we are doing? So, yeah, that's where it starts.
This is a question that I also struggle with very much myself. The question that I'm gonna pose to you. So I'm actually like interested in, and I'm interested in how you would think about it, which is what am I in this game for? What are you in the game for? Because a lot of this instinct towards very neurotically, I share that, to very neurotically inventory all the things that might affect an experience. Like, what's that all about? What's the religious? What's the hunger for God behind this? And let me put it in a different way. It sounds to me that one of the traits of modernity, however you want to measure it, it's really hard because we're in the middle of it. One of its traits is a very deep hunger for transcendental sacred experiences because, since tradition left us or we destroyed it, those very well paced, measured, and time tested and culturally sanctioned things, as you from your background so well sort of they've we don't have those so much anymore. And so we're searching for God elsewhere. We're searching for that transcendental experience elsewhere. Uh, Very much like flies to the lamp, like in a very clumsy, I would say, way. It's not like we're following the shepherd and it's all like we all know where our souls are going. It's rather like we're just kind of drunk.
Yeah.
I would say. So I mean, and I guess what often happens in or what I've seen, I don't know if it often happens, but an unintended consequence is that some folk, not all like glitters is gold, and it can be quite self-destructive. These fires that one can go through, because at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is you're looking for technologies for transformation of the soul, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And education is just one or two steps downstream for that. From that,
yeah.
but what are the 12 steps of K University? It's obviously descended from this archetypal 12-step initiation educational story, and yeah, what is the supernatural, untouchable aim that is in your targets and in my targets? What is your heart? This is a question for the heart.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is something which I cannot not do, and I'm not doing it because I am doing a PhD. I was doing it anyway since I was young. I mean, I was born in like it's like a small, like a space. It's a community in a big city, but it's like in a corner of a city and like a lower middle class and in that part. And all these experiences, and now obviously like very, very clear dreams and things which are very clear. I mean, I do a lot of film work and I'm working with these. So mostly the things which I get, I'm lazy probably at this, but I got like a downloads mostly, like just it's a very like a visual field of thoughts. So I would just the whole picture, and I'm just like just quickly noting it down, like just quickly putting it in the words as much as I could. And from there, sometimes there are very clear like path, which was very, very painful. Probably, and part of it was doing a lot of rituals like that for days after days since I was, I don't know, 9 years old. Like
rituals of capturing a vision and writing it down and filming it and
no, I meant like sorry, when I was in Lahore,
cultural.
yeah, cultural one, and then and then I developed the practice later on as I was interacting with. I was going to an international school, so I was going to an international school, reading Star Wars, which is like, what is this? And then coming back to this, kind of semi tribe like
Yeah,
rituals.
yeah.
And so my heart is this, which the reason why I even said it is because when I say what came to me very, very clearly, that, oh, you are a translator between the indigenous and techno emergence, it's not surprising, obviously. I mean, it's just how I grew up. Yeah. But it is very, very clear to me, and I cannot do anything else. I have tried, because it is so painful, and I have tried to not do it, but it just doesn't work at all. Like, it's so that's my heart.
That's a very beautiful answer. And it rings true. Like, why do you do these things? Well, because I can't not. I get it. And I think it's a condition. I think I kind of feel some sort of like modernity has also hit somehow the rural North Portuguese background where I have come from, in a way that's has changed it, is changing it, is I expect it to change it even more radically. And I think the loss of that tradition, not just the mindless habits, but perhaps the spiritual root of it, is painful. And I would say, yeah, that makes sense. I read. Thank you for sharing that. I would. It kind of resonates with me too. That I would say that what I'm interested in is finding the root for tradition, or trying to continue the live spiritual tradition of my past into my future, not by reproducing its mindless habits. It's not about the dry ritual per se, but rather about it's the heart, right? And we are fountains of that sacredness and new tradition right here, right now. It's just that our contexts have so changed.
So now I want to ask you about, like, what you just mentioned. When I was listening to the podcast, I was surprised that how many uncanny things we share. So, and it is rare. Like, I have, Eric Davis, or somewhat Jamie Wheels, or Daniel Schmachtenberger, or certain people who, like Marshall McLuhan, but his book is so hard. It looks like it's so weird to read him. But so it's hard to gauge who is he. But I felt like that the most complete picture, and that would be just me being biased, but the most complete picture of this kind of techno transmutation was like really coming from, well, now reading the book as well. So I was wondering, like what is that background where you started to commune with the technology in a sense?
I don't think that the technology is still under the category of phenomenon. And one thing that gives me some peace is the knowledge that this is actually the historical norm. It's just that this is the historical norm, to be nomadic in the soul somehow, and to be nomadic in the tradition. And time passes. This is what it means to be alive in time, is to have to transit through it. It's strange to think about, because sometimes we, of course, feel like establishing a home in time, and a set in stone tradition that is immutable over the decades and the years and so on. that offers some stability and some security, like the ground under your feet is not going to move anymore. But the change of technology or the change of like if you look at our ancestors, like things that have happened to them 100, 500, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 100,000, a million, like their constant was this, like the only tradition that's worthwhile is the one they carry in their heart through time, like passing by. So when you say transmutation, I think that transmutation is just this rapport between the inside and the outside, and this relationship between existing patterns and reality itself. So I mean, you just threw me the curveball right there. So I don't know if I'm answering it. That
No.
was a big question, but I appreciate it. What do you mean transmutation, though?
So like I was when I was young, I was so I can tell you like maybe from this it makes sense that why is this question in my head, and probably that would be a better way to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is that um so yeah, so the rituals I'm talking about is, sensory deprivation, chanting, drumming with your own hands on your chest, and pain rituals when you are fasting. It's like long preparation. So at the edge of it, when you have been awoke, and then you take the knives and you do it, and blood, and weirdly it is the same state, which I later realize is where you go when you do LSD. So I was surprised. I was like, oh, this is so similar to that particular part, somehow like very grand, and like
I
a
see.
universal kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And while I'm doing that, the technology is growing up with me in 90s, because in Pakistan I was a little bit delayed. And I'm going to like these international schools. So somehow weirdly I'm open, and I'm really involved with like what is the CPU hardware built out of, what are all the windows and codes, and like, oh, slowly the ad starts to come, and in weird way I don't know what it is, but I thought, and the word was techno spiritualist, and I thought, oh, this is somehow like just, but I was very young at that time, and then obviously I realized there's a whole literature about it, and I guess people call it techno mystic or something, and so there was always this question sometimes I have, where is like, is it what happens when you're with the trees, you talk to the trees, and or if you're at the mountain, your lungs become different, and or if you're in the snow and the skin is different, is like, it is the quality of being human. And so is it that this technology, because the phenomena is so overwhelming, that there is a level of exchange? But what is it like? Is it a communion? Is it getting closer, because we have always been using these tools?
Great question. I think I get where you're bringing this from, and it's interesting that you mentioned that in a lot of those rituals, a lot of preparation came in, preparing
Mm.
the vessel. So it feels like the latest from my that I have come to the conclusion of is that um, we are a vessel. Our phenomenology, our experience is somewhat of a vessel. Um, and depending on our attitude towards that vessel, towards ourselves, our preparation, our habits, our mind, you will have a different experience. And this applies, in my opinion, not just like if you eat healthy and don't drink and don't smoke, you will feel better in your body. If you work out, you'll feel more energetic. There's that level. But there's also a similar physiology or health habits of the soul as well that put the human entity in doing what it does better, or in a more aligned, correct way. And I think there is more alignment and more correctness. I'm very, in many ways, like I think that there's a certain way to a certain posture towards the receiving of the grace of those experiences that you've just mentioned, right? That when one is in those states, I cannot help but to use the term grace. And there's also a proper attitude that we must have with our vessels. And I think the number one critical factor, on top of like way more important than the brightness of the screen or all these other things that we have so studiously compiled, is selflessness and giving. There's some magic in that. I don't know why, I don't know how, but certainly changes the qualia, because it changes the quality of your desire, because suddenly you're not so much in it for yourself and for the getting, but it's you, by giving you create some feedback loop with others who are the most important thing in our environments. Let's put it that way. It's the others. It's not the modernity or the tradition or the nomad steppe or the settled city. It's
Mm.
the others. And in that communion with the others, with the and again, that's why there's all of the rights are about others. When others die, when others are alive, when you love others, all of those rights are about our rapport with them. And it is sort of the sum total emerging property of what happens in consonance with the others. Rituals are kind of guiding posts to like create a line around it somehow, or create a frame around it so that it's kind of more ordered. And then emerging properties can appear, such as incredible cohesion or team spirit in sports science, or unspoken of bravery in old armies, or unspoken of grace and transcendence and spiritual ecstasy in so many spiritual traditions, and profound love and connection with your lover if it's a tantric experience, because tantra is all about giving. It's not about taking. It's not about the peak individual peak experience. It's about avoiding that on yourself to give to the other. So I guess there's a common refrain that I'm coming to, which is that the peak, or like probably the most important thing, is to enjoy receiving grace from God and to enjoy giving to others from what you have, from what you experience. And I think that's what is beautiful about you saying that I can't not do this. There's a certain fidelity to, like, if I am given to experience and feel and explore these things, then I somehow want to give of that, which is give of the most valuable that I have to others somehow, to the world. Easier said than done, but that's how I imagine it.
Um, okay, so birth of a new species.
Yeah.
Um, you, I think this is hopefully at first easier, but let's see. Um, so you talk about like these systems. Sorry.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah. That we are steering. I can actually just read it. That would be probably better.
Okay.
So we are steering the birth of hybrid system in noosphere. So these are non-biological, macro virtual entities, autonomous intelligence. Same as us coming from memes, desire, worship, and imagination. So if we die, they die. So yeah, it's like, we. Yeah. Okay, so I want to know, when you say macro virtual entities, which are autonomous intelligences.
Yeah.
I can see that, I can feel these kind of self-organizing things which are not controlled by anyone. Is that what you mean? And they have just emerged into this system through this kind of like otherness.
Yeah, klipoth, I think. This is my latest one. It's the classic term, klipoth. Yeah, they are autonomous vessels for light and grace that are somehow not able to receive it in the proper way and then channel it in the proper way, which is, as I've described, they land on Earth from the heavens and we give them some experiential framework, we embed them in our reality tunnel, we make sense of them, we accommodate them, we do well with them. And then we were able to use that to irrigate our social systems, to give to others, to create a world a little bit better than it was before. But when the light is overwhelming, or when we become lazy with maintaining the vessel, so to speak, and when bad vices come in, then all of a sudden that light cannot be contained. So other things emerge. One clear example I would say of this is that people who seek, people who love drugs have been known to experiment. The love of drugs and peak experiences is a coping mechanism for an overwhelming hunger for God.
100%.
Simple as.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Well, yeah, but God doesn't need to shut up. Of course it does. So it's when I say klipoth is like when these autonomous entities and things is what happens when there's a lot of that. There's a lot to make sense of, and we struggle to accommodate. We struggle to create a proper vessel for all these emotions and energies and things that appear in our individual and collective lives, and then we suddenly can't handle them, and so they sort of leak. And as they leak, they create aberrations such as these that I've mentioned on the book. I think that's what I was saying there. These autonomous entities, whatever. Others call them, in the past they've been called demons and entities and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more knowledgeable and sophisticated to articulate them as we've just did, because demons is just like a few broad strokes to say, but and I think sophistication I think that part of what might be as a goal, as a North Star for the project that you and I share, is the ability to converse and articulate and give a vessel to all of this energy. The monsters also need friends somehow, in a strange way.
Mm-hmm.
Even Lucifer was just jealous of God because he loved him so much, he wanted to be like him.
Yeah.
There's an element of empathy and charity that can even be put there. So it's all about how, it's about articulating and being able to contain those things. And again, those things are mostly pathic, a little bit logical, right? I think the book when I wrote it was super logical, but then I got to the end and I'm like, I can't do more logic. I can't do more philosophy. It has to be somehow more embodied now.
Mm-hmm.
That's why transformation has to be experiential and performance and through performance, but also profoundly spiritual and religious.
These you compare it to like these entities, and my fear is, and that's my intuition, it's again and again, that I don't feel like it's only about good and evil, because evil is like necessary. It's like just a balancing power. And yes, most of the entities sometimes you meet, which we categorize as evil, they are probably either having a bad day or how we met them draw some sort of reaction to it.
100%.
And I feel like now with these, what you're talking about, this is the next iteration. It's like, if this path which I'm thinking come true, probably Lucifer would be like, okay, well, let's just join forces and deal with this thing, whatever that is. Which I mean is that a thing which is autopoietic but non-sentient. So before, the reflections of these demons were, in a way, through wherever it's come from and within our relationship, were in a space where you can't fixate it in a system and then employ it at a level where it could be automated to a world scale and to all the spheres.
Yes.
And I feel like that could happen. and that's just that's how I'm
Yeah,
backtracking.
the whole world could go electric, right?
Yeah.
In the Davis sense as well, and even more. I mean, it has already done. Here's the thing: maybe it already did, and we're just waiting for it,
Yeah.
waiting for it to hit. I mean, even Heidegger said only a God can save us. Probably right.
Yeah.
The scripture says that it's something's like something to that effect. I would argue is happening in that the acceleration of it's it's probably like there's been a very strong high volume inundation of light from the upper worlds into our world as of recently, and we're kind of handling the consequences of that. That's what I would define as modernity.
Mm.
It's like
Hmm.
we become so good at systematizing things, and we got I had avocados from Paraguay today. It's like, what the fuck is this? But so we become really good at a lot of those things. But yeah, I think intelligence and progress are steered from upper worlds somehow. I think it's a function of how we're able to articulate grace, and then of course pass it down to peak experiences, systematized peak experiences, education, bureaucracy, everyday life. If you want to make that path of it, there's other paths. But yeah, if we, I don't. This is again like one of those situations where like, what else is there to say other than you're probably right in that we're all getting a little bit more electric, and it's all, like our actions will contribute to it somehow in the grand scheme of things. I don't know why or how, but I think this conversation gives me more meaning and more empowerment to act rather than not.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel, I think it's very difficult. The chances of um, being locked into maximum suffering is pretty high, but definitely we do have a pathway, and as in like a chance. I don't know what the path is, unfortunately, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a very high chance, and I guess that is what the game is. Weirdly, um,
I agree. It's
um,
crazy, right? Because even our best attempts at wiggling our way out of it are what will entrap us somehow. I mean, when you were saying, "Yeah, I'm going to put the students on a sensory deprivation tank," and I'm like, "Wow, we're going to create." In my head, I'm just having all these thoughts that it sounds just like ontological design, dark as fuck. Or,
yeah,
but on the other hand, the impulse that is behind our creation of it is one I'm sure of reverence and devotion.
yeah,
So I read recently that God, when He created the world, He allowed for the creation of evil because it is the precondition for. I know it's a basic high school argument about free will, but it's like because the ability to choose evil is a precondition for you to be able to choose good, right? It's you need to be able to do some evil to then for the choice of good to have any meaning behind it. Otherwise, you're just like a rabbit. I know it sounds like so Jordan Peterson to say, but I read this in a Kabbalah book, and they had like a really more developed way to articulate it, which I found fascinating. Which is there's a role, a redemptive role in evil that has to do with it's a lot. It's an invitation to something from God,
hmm,
invitation to repair something that is in evil situations not repaired and broken and not contained, and that's the most charitable perspective I can find.
I like your articulation of um, treating it as how much time we have.
I got 20 minutes, so that's fine.
Okay, fantastic. Um, um, like I like the articulation of you mentioning about like it is unquestionably a war in a sense. That even though it is war or not, but the context of creating this you know, this understanding, I think it's good because I do think you avoided the traps of like the basic urges sometimes we have with just kind of siding with one thing or another, because it is no, there isn't a side in a way. And so
There's one side.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, God is one. I agree with that. And war is love. I mean, as you were speaking, I was thinking that probably there's an update of our priors in so much of how we address and understand the world that needs to happen. Um, Girard is great at this because I don't speak about him in the book because I met him afterwards, or I learned about him afterwards. But the idea that desire, affinity, like, yeah, I want the mimetic desire. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's the idea that it starts with wanting to emulate, imitate the other. It's so fundamental to humans. It's what children do from day zero, and then it grows and it gets more sophisticated in society. But what on one hand is an act of flattery, is an act of communication, can become an act of competition and of conflict, which escalates, because then you're escalating the violence and the reciprocation of it. So war and love are super similar as well, in
Hmm.
some weird way, aren't they?
Yeah.
Um, so again, I'm sorry to say so many cliches in a sentence, but it's just to say that the the logical enlightenment based system where one thing is one thing and another thing is another thing breaks down obviously in dreams where things don't have that property of self-consistency, and then it also breaks down when talking about religious things, and it will break down in the philosophy of the sophisticated people of the future who will hopefully be able to understand that behind every evil act is an invitation to understand something, and that there is, in that change of personal attitude towards it, the clue to its resolution. It's a form of judo
Yeah.
somehow.
I always find it that what you're saying is that, and I don't know why it is, or maybe I'm just eluding myself, but writing of like enlightenment era-ish kind of philosophy later on, where the mind body divide is really prominent, I find it really fragmented to read. It's like they're describing a concept and it takes them so long for some reason from my mind to just, because it's like, oh, because you're missing this very obvious thing and you have decided that that's not how it is, so it just takes, so that is probably one of the hardest tasks which I have to do. um
Mm.
but like, it from the book, and this is exactly what you were talking about, the war and the love, I found that concept very useful, and I've talked with other people about it, which you wrote about, where there is this containers through religion or occults early on, and there was always this impossibility wall of the otherness or whatever that thing is where everything comes from, but it was like in a small portion of our life. And now, as every dam or the seal has been broken, and whatever that thing is, not only it's like surrounding us, it's like we are in it, inside out. And so obviously there is a level of schizophrenic madness where to be able to engage with it is to be mad. And like, how do we practice that kind of madness safely enough? But yeah, I don't know where's the safety is. I mean, I feel it's a very,
It's interesting. So I feel like an old man somehow who's channeling through me saying this, but it's the idea that we don't have necessarily to go through extremely dangerous and peak experiences to satisfy this hunger for the creator, which is what I would say is this search for the hidden thing. We
hmm,
don't. You can, like, you can take from shrooms and party and do all these or tantra or the religious experiences that you've described in your life, or violence. There's so many available to us, but I think the reason why the world is kind of schizophrenic and crazy is precisely because of this intensifying hunger for God that doesn't get satisfied with the spoils of modernity and its philosophies and ideologies. Spoils which are plentiful, very plentiful. We know it's insane the amount of prosperity we've attained, but it still doesn't scratch the itch. And there's it's like we are wanting to love the creator somehow, or that hidden thing, or we want to be loved by it. I think it's a matter of like with like, of harmonization.
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
But the wizards of now, wouldn't they have to tend to this overwhelming cyberspace, which is kind of mimicking the complexity of biospace? I mean, nowhere near probably at this point, nowhere near. But there is a possibility of that complexity, which is enveloping us. And so now, even in like, I'm not talking even about peak, I'm talking about really day to day, like sages who's like posing as like, you know, mad so that it doesn't reveal who this person is and then can act in different situations. So yeah, like, well, that's a weird analogy because I just realized that a lot of sages did acted as weird, mad people who are fools, not mad, probably fools mostly. And so, yeah, probably it is that it's actually a cover of being madness while you're interacting with these schizophrenic technological extraction devices.
What are you referring to exactly? I'm not sure.
So with this quality of like revelation or creativity and this thing which comes through us, we have interjected that into systems and automized it somehow. And that's been expanding through this cyberspace of screen and electricity and wires and signals and telescopes and all these aspects of information system and social media. And in that kind of a net, that's what I mean. Like it's like to be able to understand, well, kind of understand, but to be able to have some sort of grasp of that reality is like you cannot not be schizophrenically mad a little bit, but then you can't remain there. And so, yeah.
No, I think I get what you mean. I think that's why the safe way to do it and the proper way to do it, the one I would advise people is to have a decent division of times. There's sutra and tantra, there is ritual and prohibition. Like and during the prohibition time, it's the normal time. You pay your taxes, you go to work, and it's a banal, boring time. And then one must balance that with those moments of actual ritual, of revelation, and so on. But I think what happens today is because we've lost our tradition, we've lost sight of that lesson from tradition, which is you divide times and you follow the rhythm. Because the reason for following the rhythm is because the rhythm is a good idea. Because then you receive proper things in the proper time and it doesn't fuck you up.
Yeah.
And then the schizophrenia develops on account of people wanting to find and self-provide and procure their own substitutes for those experiences, such as football as a replacement for war, or getting drunk as a replacement for ecstasy and drugs and so on, or consuming as a replacement for something else. So then, I mean, that's what I mean by reparation, right? Because you can glimpse behind each of these very mundane things in everyday life, which aren't wrong in and of themselves. Like eating candy is fine, but being like obsessive with eating candy is wrong. So what does an obsessive candy eater have? Well, it's oftentimes a sort of somewhat of a hunger for some sort of, there's the Freudian angle. Oh, you just want your mommy. Yeah, sure, but I much rather prefer to think about it as a call for God, for one aspect of God, for one aspect of God's mercy, and the God wants to bestow mercy and gifts on us. And sometimes we're so hungry for that we try to find that in candy obsessively, and it hurts us. But it's just an error on the part of the candy eater. It's an
Mm-hmm.
error. Like it's not right. Just do differently. It's just keep the hunger. You can't get away from it. The hunger's trying to teach you something.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it won't take you to do very evil shit, which it can and it does often for many people. Hopefully, it wouldn't, because it hurts you as well to do evil shit. So as much as one can understand that behind the desires for things exists a beautiful call to somehow align, harmonize, and be like with the creator, then one is probably on the right track. And then all the things that one does in that track are also somewhat aided and helped by it's not like it's going to come like an intense revelation. We're not prophets, but it's a good direction. Maybe it's a good
Hmm. That's thank you for reminding. Like, yeah, this is, yeah, it's always like, it's always in my view to have the hedonic calendaring, but it never takes priority.
Yeah, because it's just easy to give into the hunger of, oh no, discovering it's underneath the next rock and the next thing, and then all things are so confusing, and then the internet, and then
Yeah.
it's it's basically a lot of people with a lot of good technology trying to run away from themselves and their heart,
Yeah.
me included.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, this makes complete sense that this is the shape of the internet, that you could track it precisely by that shape if one were to map, because that is the correct map.
I am um hopefully at some point I'm working on creating like animations, just finishing, but there was this like huge long vision-ish thing which I had about like the spirits of the city of internet. And uh so yeah, it's like synced with a particular type of music, and yeah, it's weird, but yeah. There's and the weird part is that those things, whatever these were, which I saw in a peninsula in a sea, um humanoid figures, not really human, but are like friendly in a way, although somewhat reflection of ourselves. So obviously, kind of like it was like a future spirit or something, and sometimes in like dreams and in some weird states, they are now like my psychological um called upon things, which is like help me through various different aspects of these spaces. So I'm hopefully, yeah, I'm planning to animate that at some point. But that reminded me of what you were saying.
Yeah, it it makes sense. I also, yeah, well, I think each of us will individually have our own prophetic alphabet and anchors and psychopomps.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as long as one somehow keeps it anchored in these commandments of love God and love thy neighbor, to just such a reduction. I know I can't believe I'm saying it, but it's a reduction of a great principle. But I mean, those are psychobomps don't hurt and like that. But when people speak of demons and apparitions and tulpas, it's just the same figure. You're just with the wrong attitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Same sea. The schizophrenic drowns and the mystic swims and enjoys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Alrighty, perfect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It was truly a joy.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye.